This is Montgomery Mosaic on 1450 WOL, WPRS, HD2, and worldwide on WOLDCnews.com. Montgomery Mosaic features topics of interest to Montgomery County residents, businesses, and visitors. Here now is your host, Deborah Milo.
Good morning, Montgomery County. Thank you for joining us for another edition of Montgomery Mosaic. I'm your host, Deborah Milo. I hope you're having a productive and positive day as we celebrate the final week of Black History Month. You know, although Black History Month is acknowledged during the month of February, we celebrate the beauty and dignity of our heritage every day. So with that in mind, today's topic is one that is very significant to the African American community, and that's African American health issues. Our guest today is Dr. Alder Tillman, Public Health Officer for the Montgomery County Department of Health and Human Services. Dr. Tillman was appointed Public Health Officer for Health and Human Services in October of 2003. MCDHHS, as it's called, or Montgomery County Department of Health and Human Services, is a local public health and social services agency. You know, they serve almost 1 million residents. And as the county's public health officer and chief of public health services, Dr. Tillman oversees a comprehensive array of public health services with a complement of more than 500 staff. Dr. Tillman's interests focus on increasing access to quality health care, eliminating health disparities, and increasing community emergency preparedness. Dr. Tillman, welcome to Montgomery Mosaic. It's a pleasure to have you on the show today.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Would you mind sharing with our listeners a little bit about yourself, such as what drew you to public health?
Oh, boy. Okay. As a preteen, I had a doctor in my neighborhood in Philadelphia who just inspired me with his bedside manner and the way he was such a neighborhood doctor. And I decided, even though I came from a family of teachers and lawyers, that, I wanted to try medicine. Yes. So I studied science. I had the great opportunity of going to Harvard Medical School, and they really focused on neighborhood health centers. So I got involved in that. I went down to Mississippi when I finished medical school, and I was in a federally qualified health center. I loved it, and I said, this is what I want to do. So after I got kind of through the grueling residency programs, I said, I got to do something that's going to be community medicine, and it ended up being public health and preventive medicine. Mm-hmm. And it was really a joy to serve individuals one-on-one, but also to affect policy decisions and look at how can we change the health disparities that have been in our country so long.
So basically what you're telling me, you are a black girl that wanted to make that change happen.
Yes.
I love that. I love that. Let's talk about what some of the most critical health issues facing African Americans really are. Now, I know that there are a lot, and public health certainly is the arena where we can talk about those and address those. Share with our listeners, if you would, what are the most critical health issues facing us right now?
I would say for African Americans, we have to be concerned about heart disease and stroke, diabetes, cancer, and of course there are a number of cancers, and also obesity. Obesity has just been growing so quickly over our last generation that we are at risk of worsening our life expectancy, and actually for the current generation to live as long as their parents. So I can see, for me, I would focus on obesity since it touches so much in terms of heart disease, cancer, and diabetes.
I'm telling you, and the list just seems to continue to grow more and more, not to mention the fact that African American women have another whole different element of issue to focus on. Is that correct?
In terms of what, infant mortality?
Infant mortality,
yes,
other
definitely.
issues like that. And see, that's something, I think we're dealing with that in Montgomery County now, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct?
Yes, we are. And actually, we're no different from the rest of the nation that African Americans tend to have twice the rate of infant death, children dying before they're 1 year old, than non-Hispanic whites. So it is a concern, yes.
So you mentioned that there are definitely issues facing African Americans in our area. So we do mirror what is seen nationally?
Yes, we do. Although I would say overall in Montgomery County, we do better than the rest of the country. But frankly, for African Americans and blacks, there is this persistent health disparity and health gap. And that doesn't seem to matter if you have a good income, good education. There's this burden of disease that we have inherited that we have to continue to fight against, to have good health and well-being.
That's so important to know. If you've just tuned in, this is Montgomery Mosaic with your host, Deborah Milo, and today I have the privilege of talking to the county's public health officer, Dr. Older Tillman. We were starting to talk about the health issues that actually face African Americans and how our county nationally actually mirrors the national average. You were talking about obesity, and we read that obesity is one of the most detrimental and common health disparities within the African American community. So, Dr. Tillman, how do obesity rates among African Americans compare with other ethnic groups?
I would say generally that we have a disproportionate share, although Latino children also have a problem with overweight and obesity. But primarily for Latinos and for African Americans, the obesity rate can be 1.5 or twice the rate of non-Hispanic whites. And it's getting to younger and younger ages, so that we have even concerns for children who participate in WIC as young as they are, before they even begin school, that they are overweight. So we have to look at some of those issues that promote obesity in our communities.
Let's shift a bit. Well, not really shift a bit, since we're on the topic of childhood obesity. Now, in 2010, First Lady Michelle Obama launched the Let's Move campaign because, quote, the physical and emotional health of an entire generation and the economic health and security of our nation is at stake. Now, do you think the campaign has made a significant impact in dealing with childhood obesity within our community, and how?
I think Michelle Obama has actually improved the attitude and given hope to our communities. So not only was she encouraging people to be more physically active, but also to think about what you're eating, and in terms of gardens and having fruits and vegetables. So I think she's brought that optimism,
awareness,
to us.
So to speak.
And awareness, yes. But there's just so much that needs to be done that it takes many Michelle Obamas to get this to change.
It does. It really does. So how about heart rates? Let's talk a little bit about the heart issue. You were talking about that another issue that we deal with is our high blood pressure and all those types of factors. Talk a little bit more about that.
Let's see. I'm trying to think what's the simplest way to go about that. We have long history, and we have a disproportionate share of heart disease, meaning that we have hardening of the arteries with the higher cholesterol. The obesity doesn't help. Heart disease and stroke. There's so many factors that affect that, so that if we're less physically active, if we eat the overly rich foods, and not the lean meats and a lot of green vegetables, then we are prone to suffering from heart disease at earlier ages, since we also have a higher rate of diabetes that affects the entire body, and so that also accelerates the risk of heart disease. So actually, second to cancer, what we die of is heart disease and stroke.
Now, is heart disease not diagnosed in African American women, or women actually in general as much as men? I think I might have read that in a journal at some point.
Most studies had been done on men, but we now have a better awareness that women can present with different symptoms but still be at risk for heart disease. So I think in the last decade, when you hear so much about the Red Dress campaign, it's trying to help women to be aware that it's not just your spouse or your loved one who's a male, it's you and your daughter, your sister, your aunts who have to think about being heart healthy as well.
We were talking earlier about childhood obesity. One of the questions that someone asked me recently, and I found this to be very true, for some reason within our communities, especially in economically oppressed communities, we're pretty much unable to locate a grocery store or a greengrocer like when I was a kid, that sells fresh fruit and vegetables or offers any type of healthy alternative, not to mention that, and unfortunately you hear this many times within our community, that eating healthy is expensive. How significant is this factor?
You know, it's very interesting in Montgomery County that it's not so much of not having enough green groceries.
Mm-hmm.
It's that we have so many fast food outlets in our county, and it's easier to go get that cheeseburger and fries than it is to buy food, whether it's frozen or fresh, and take it home and prepare. And this tendency to go for the convenience food, that tends to be cheaper, is really what's undoing us. And so, you know, we're taking in way too many fats and sodium and sugars than we should be. So that's inputting on the weight and the obesity, and it's causing a lot of problems. And if you're bringing up your children that they're eating fast food once or twice a week, they're developing a habit that they want to sustain. And I remember even with my son, I used to do when he was younger, about once a week we could go through the drive-through, and then I used to say to him, please, we've got to stop doing it. He said, but Mom, it tastes so good.
That's right.
And that's the problem.
It's the awareness. It's the, like you said, not so much that it's not available, because we're fortunate to live within a county that we have good and bad in that we do have the grocery stores that have all these wonderful things like Whole Foods and, you know, Trader Joe's and all that.
Yes.
But at the same time, there are a lot of McDonald's and a lot of Wendy's on every corner. And that's a huge issue. If you've just tuned in, welcome to Montgomery Mosaic on 1450 WOL. I'm your host, Deborah Milo, and I'm here today with the county's public health officer, Dr. Alder Tillman, and we're talking about obesity and obesity rates within the African American community. So what other diseases and health conditions are impacted by obesity?
Obesity actually is, in fact, impacting not only heart disease, but cancer, stroke, diabetes, even infant mortality. So that, you know, overweight and heavy women have a tendency to have small for birth weight babies and other complications. So obesity touches many different conditions and diseases.
Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about obesity more when we come back from our break. But just before we go to break, just wanted to remind you that we're on twice a month now, the second and fourth Wednesday of each month, and that we're on at the same time, 10:30 a.m. So we want you to tune in when you can and listen to Montgomery Mosaic to get some great information. We'll be right back.
1450 WOL.
Good morning. This WOL Traffic and Weather Report brought to you by Unbound.com. On the inner loop of the Beltway after Pennsylvania Avenue, heading down toward Andrews Air Force Base, they're back again with the mobile road work crew. 2 left lanes as they continue towards St. Barnabas Road. Look for a movable backup approaching the movable work zone. Rock Creek Parkway, Massachusetts Avenue Northwest. Sent a report of an accident. Northbound the BW Parkway heading up to the Beltway, you're okay. But it was some police activity up near Laurel slowing things down. Do something meaningful today. Change the life of a child living in poverty. Learn more at unbound.org. Now your WOL weather forecast for today. Partly cloudy, a high near 42. For tonight, a little bit of snow likely down to 28. Tomorrow, becoming partly cloudy by afternoon and a high near 34. Steve Hirschhorn for News Talk 1450 WOL, where information is power.
We're back, Montgomery County, and we're talking with Dr. Alder Tillman. She's the public health officer for the Department of Health and Human Services with Montgomery County. Prior to the break, we were talking about some of the things that impact, that obesity can impact. And Dr. Tillman, you were going to expand a little bit more about that issue.
Well, I was saying that obesity affects cancers, so that you're at more risk for colorectal cancer, men for prostate cancer, women and men pancreas cancer, as well as uterine and ovarian cancer. And older women have a greater tendency for breast cancer if they're overweight and obese. And these are things that we ordinarily don't even think about being related to obesity. But as I said, it affects your entire body, so that you have to, you know, we have so many more people now who have what used to be called adult onset diabetes, but actually it's now type 2 because it's affecting people at younger and younger ages,
right,
and children. So that obesity can bring that on, as well as the hypertension, the heart disease, so it has a lot of sequelae or consequences. So it's something that we really have to focus on. And for us, it means we have to look at the lifestyle changes as well as the environmental, what I call environmental controls.
Mm-hmm. So we're talking about other issues and health conditions that are impacted by obesity. So are there specific risk factors that African Americans exhibit more than other ethnic groups might not have?
That's somewhat of a hard question because we have a lot of diversity.
True.
I would say that we are more prone to hypertension or high blood pressure, and that is worsened by obesity. I think because of some of our social economic situations where we're looking for more affordable foods and not having neighborhoods where you can freely get outside and walk and exercise, that tends to lean you more towards being overweight and obese and not having too many options in terms of what to do about it. So I could say those are features that are not unique to African Americans and blacks, but tends to be more present and common.
It's interesting that you say that. 30 years ago, and I'm giving my age here, but 30 years ago, people lived lives, especially within the African American community, that required that we walked to wherever we needed to get to, that kids went outside and we could play. Kids walked, from school every day to go home, even sometimes at lunch. I can remember walking home at lunchtime. But now, they don't have gym class anymore. Kids would play for hours after school or before dinner. And so meals were home cooked. You had reasonable portion sizes, and there was always a vegetable on the plate. And I'm telling you, I remember my mother telling me, girl, if you don't eat that vegetable, and I mean, we would have at least 2 vegetables on our plate because that was the way it was. My parents were farmers. They grew up on farms. And so eating fast food was just not something that we did. And snacking between meals, we had healthy snacks. Candy was not permitted in my mother's home. I can tell you that.
That's excellent. Excellent.
That was something, and you try to pass that on to the next generation. You were mentioning, talking about how we need to pass on those types of habits. Do you think that that's something that we're being successful in doing at any rate?
I think we've had an increased trend in our school systems and in our communities to focus on better nutrition as well as increased physical activity. Yes, we have a problem that we aren't able to get back in enough physical activity classes in schools, but we are trying to really pump up our after-school programs and our community programs in terms of encouraging children as well as their parents to be more physically active. We have in Montgomery County an African American health program that has looked at these issues for quite a while, and they got started back in 1999, but they have put emphasis on the diabetes and cardiovascular health. And they have, like walking clubs or, particularly in this month of African American History Month,
right,
as well as in the summer, they like to do, let's follow the Sojourner Truth Trail or something like that, a heart healthy trail to get people up and moving. And there are classes, and I used to be fascinated. Not only was there a diabetes dining club, but you can see the seniors who were also doing physical activity and stepping and all of this. And I said, that's the way to do it. You have to incorporate it into your routine, into your routine daily life, and not just once a month. But really, we should be exercising about 30 minutes every day, or at least for 5 days a week. And how many of us do that? In Montgomery County, we are so used to being in our vehicles and driving everywhere. And as you said, we don't walk to the store anymore. Few of us walk to school or any place. And so it's really a sedentary lifestyle that we've developed for ourselves. And if one message that I can leave for everyone, if you have the type of job when you're sitting most of the time, remember every hour, get up and move. Whether you're walking, going up or down stairs, or just doing the perimeter of the building, you gotta move, because now the sitting is the leading killer of us.
Oh, my goodness. Now, see.
And we're sitting. Okay, we're sitting.
You know, I work in the county also, and we, in the EOB, the Executive Office Building, what's interesting is that we have signs in the Executive Office Building that tell you, take the stairs, take the stairs. I am not going to tell you how many times I have not taken the stairs, and especially depending on what floor you work on. But, you know, I've started doing it within the past few months, and I must tell you, it does make a difference.
It makes a difference.
And I work out at least 4 days a week.
Okay.
I do work out at least 4 days a week. I've gotten pretty good with passing by Wendy's. I've gotten pretty good. But, you know, that's another factor, too, is that making better health eating choices when you dine. How would you address that when it comes to trying to dine out? And, you know, it's tough. How do we go about making better choices for when we're eating out?
Number one, I would say that you need to be more assertive in terms of what you're going to put on your plate so that you're paying for this food. And, you know, it does come with too many portions, you know, in a serving. And that's something to think about. But you can ask, you know, in terms of how are those meats prepared, you know, as well as the starches. Tell them that you want your salad dressing on the side, you want the butter or whatever else they have on the side, you want things leaner, and you want also to tell them, and please put half of that you're going to bring me in a carry-out bag, because I only want to eat a portion right now. But you have to begin to insist on these small changes. Another thing to remember, try to ignore the bread. You know, do you ordinarily have bread with every meal? Put it aside. Drink water rather than sugary beverages. You know, and these are ways that you can trim down the calories. And that's very important. But you do need to get away from the processed foods and more towards the what's made from scratch. And when you go out to eat, you can insist that, okay, I want my steamed vegetables and I don't want them steamed in oil. You know? So you can insist ways, you know, you're welcome to ask now, how is the food prepared? It's particularly at a time when we have so many individuals who have allergies or dietary, you know, restrictions. So that many restaurants are quite willing to make it the way you prefer it to be and what's going to be healthier for you. And the other thing, when you're either eating at home or eating out, try to make half of that plate vegetables. Fresh vegetables. Ooh. Half of it. Half of it.
Did you hear that, county
less
listeners?
Less protein, less starch. Half should be vegetables.
Thank you for tuning into Montgomery Mosaic. I'm Deborah Milo, your radio host, and I'm happy to be with Dr. Alder Tillman, Public Health Officer with the Department of Health and Human Services. We are having a wonderful conversation about a subject matter that's really tough, and that's African American health issues and things that impact our communities. But Dr. Tillman is doing an awesome job in talking about this and how we can prevent a lot of the issues that do impact us. So what is Montgomery County doing as a community to decrease those obesity rates, Dr. Tillman?
Okay, we have 2 programs that are underway. The first one I had mentioned was the African American Health Program that's been around since 1999, and you can get more information about that program if you go to their website, which is onehealthylife.org.
Great.
And that will give you, you know, a wealth of information. Something else that we're doing, and I encourage individuals to look at the website, www.healthymontgomery.org. This is where we're trying to do a county health improvement process so that we're involving many sectors in Montgomery County on a steering committee or in coalitions to focus on issues. And we have focused in the last year or so on obesity as well as behavioral health, which includes mental health and substance use. But the obesity, we now have a coalition that focuses on what are the good things we're doing in Montgomery County, where are the gaps, and what are the resources that we can make available. We're hoping by the end of this year that the work that coalition has been doing, we'll have it available to us online, that we can look at. These are the different resources you can use if you want to make changes personally and in your neighborhood about reducing obesity or preventing obesity. So that is something that I encourage you to look at that website. And that website also includes a lot of data, so you can readily see how African Americans and blacks have health disparities and are at a disadvantage in terms of that. But I encourage you, don't give up hope. We can turn this around.
That's right.
We really can turn this around. But you've got to start from a family focus on it in terms of helping your children, and the parents need to model for the children that, yes, we can eat healthy and we can be more physically active and we can enjoy it while we're doing it.
Would you mind repeating the websites, Dr. Tillman?
Okay. The one that we're mostly focusing on for obesity is www.healthymontgomery.org, and that will have the data and the information on the coalitions, what we're doing. And then the African American Health Program is at www.onehealthylife.org.
Wonderful. Dr. Tillman, I can't thank you enough for coming on to Montgomery Mosaic today and talking about the health issues impacting African American communities. Well, Montgomery County, this is Montgomery Mosaic on 1450 WOL. And again, like I said, we're on twice a month now. That's all we have time for today. I'd like to thank my guest, Dr. Alder Tillman, who was delightful, by the way, for talking to us about African American health issues. Thanks, listeners, and tune in again next month. And don't forget, we're on the second and fourth Wednesday of each month for another edition of Montgomery Mosaic on 1450 WOL, WPRS HDD2, and worldwide on WOLDCnews.com. Till next time, make it a positive and healthy day.
Listening to Montgomery Mosaic, featuring topics of interest to Montgomery County residents, businesses, and visitors. For more information or a copy of the show, email publicinformation@montgomerymd.gov or call 240-777-6507. Be sure to tune in at this time on the second and fourth Wednesday every month for Montgomery Mosaic on 1450 WOL, WPRS, HD2, and worldwide on WOLDCnews.com.